Well, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Rakowski here with an epic guest, Mr. Ty Allan Jackson. We had a little conversation before the start, and he says, I like to keep it casual. I like to keep it light. I like to keep it fun. And that's really his brand. And I want to say that he is brilliant and epic and a contributor, really tapping into all demographics, even though you started out with a specific mission. I watched your TED Talk way back when. And maybe we go to that. So
Sure.
How did that happen? How did that TED Talk happen? And for our audience, what was the message that you were trying to get across?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me be a guest on your show. To answer your question, the TED Talk happened very organically. I had always have been a fan of TED and wanted to always apply. And then serendipitously, they reached out to me. And I guess they were where I lived at the time in Western Massachusetts. The TED Talk was in Albany, which was only about an hour away. They were looking to emphasize the importance of literacy and reading. Googled the term of advocate, a literacy advocate. My name popped up. They gave me a call, and I showed up, and the rest is quote unquote history. And that was one of 3 TED Talks that I've done, but it was my first one, and I loved every second of it. I guess the message that I was trying to convey in that particular one was the pathway of becoming an independent author, especially after being rejected through the traditional publishing way, but also the lack of diversity in children's books and how that's still prominent today, and how it really impacts our culture and society, and not just for people of color, but for everyone, because illiteracy impacts every single one of us. We may not realize it, but illiteracy impacts our crime rate, it impacts our property taxes, it increases our teen pregnancy and drug use. So illiteracy really is this all-encompassing thing that if we don't tackle it, if we're not even aware of it, it's going to be something that we easily succumb to, even though we may not realize it.
Well, I want to share a quote that always resonated with me. Someone who doesn't read is no better off than someone who cannot read.
That is right.
And so, we owe it to ourselves to expand our body, mind, and spirit in nourishing ways and to pick good mentors. But, now let's go with those rejections. Last I read 147 rejections.
147. Yes.
I think I would have lost count at God knows what. Let's say 93 or something like that. But what kept you going?
The no's kept me going. And I was in sales at the time. I was in corporate sales, and you're taught in sales that every no brings you closer to a yes. So it almost was almost empowering to receive no, especially because I believed in it so much. So I aligned all the no's with how powerful I knew that it was. And I knew I was on to something despite the no's, maybe even because of the no's. So, but after the 147th, I'm like, okay, I'm tired of being rejected by people who I believe have, well, let me rephrase. Like, I wasn't going to let 147 strangers dictate my success. So I decided, I can figure out how to do this myself. I literally Googled, how do you self-publish a book? It took me a year to learn how to publish. I started my own self-publishing company. I named it Big Head Books. You could see why. And then a year after I started my publishing company, my first book was born, and the rest again is history.
Well, you're in a long line of people that got a lot of rejections, although I think 147, that's a personal record that I read. And, you sold 250,000 self-published books. And that reminds me of Andy Andrews. He got rejected. Finally, I believe he self-published his first book. And then after he sold 100,000 copies, he still went back to the publishing company. And they said, you already sold 100,000. And, I don't know how many copies he's up to at that point. But, we need to get the word out about how you're sharing words to empower people. And it's not limited. It's not limited to kids. Einstein said this: if you can't explain it simply, you just don't understand it well enough. Mm. So let's go to this financial literacy, not just for kids, but for all of us. What are the tips there?
So there are many, and I think especially targeted for kids. I want to first preface it by saying I'm not a financial literacy expert, not by any means. I started out and still am as a concerned father who wants to make sure that financial literacy is part of the learning narrative for my kids. And so I learn on that premise. I teach on that premise. So I think one of the things that I'm proud most of this book is in its financial literacy realm is that it gives permission for kids, regardless of their age, to dream that they could start their own business and receive the tools via one of my books to implement that dream. And you know, when they see this character who's only 11 years old, who has a vision to become a millionaire, is working hard towards it, and really believes in themselves, it is such a great recipe for self-awareness, self-confidence. And I feel like those are the more determining factors, even more so than financial literacy, that they believe that they can. And then once they marry that self-confidence and belief along with the drive and the perseverance, and then the financial literacy tips it takes for them to create their own business, I think then you've got this amazing recipe for success, and to have kids develop that success in whatever way they see fit. I believe that all kids, you know, once they're planted that seed that they can start their own business, I ask them to, like, what are you really good at? What's the thing that you love to do? And it can be playing video games. It can be being a sneaker aficionado. It can be playing baseball. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, how can we spin that off into a business? And where I'm really proud that 3 years ago we launched with that premise, the Danny Dollar Entrepreneur Fair. And the premise is exactly like a science fair, except kids demonstrate their ideas for business instead of how a volcano erupts or how a light bulb lights. And we started with 50 students 3 years ago. Almost 3,000 students have participated in it this year.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge success. And, you know, I saw the video of you and Danny Dollar, right? This 7-foot, you know, mascot, which was so well done. And I liked your caption, you know, $1,000 for the mascot, but the response, priceless.
Priceless. Yeah. And what I'm very fortunate of is that that mascot was actually sponsored by one of my partners, the Mississippi Council on Economic Development, who I've worked with for years now in promoting financial literacy to kids in that community. And so to have the buy-in of an institution like that to allow us to have this character and use it as a tool to empower our young people is just really, really wonderful.
Well, part of the message that I really enjoyed, and I think I enjoyed the whole message, but you know, you have multiple buckets that you put money in. You spend some, you save some, you share some. You threw out a pretty big number, 20%. I mean, tithing is 10, but you're going 20. So what gives you that generous spirit?
Because I think when you're talking about your future, you have to go all in. Like you've got to have this mindset that while I want to live for today, I really need to think about tomorrow. And I think a lot of kids don't have that vision. I mean, you know, and I can understand why, living in the Google age where all you got to do is ask Siri for a bit of information, where you pick up the phone and you can have a pizza in your house in 20 minutes. Like, there's this self-gratification aspect to our youth today. And success doesn't work that way. And so, like, I want them to be more forward thinking about their future. And that means that they have to invest a little bit more so that they can live more comfortably tomorrow than today. Then I think that that's a good seed to plant.
Well, it's a great seed to plant. And then now, you know, I think you're blessed beyond words. Your mother introduced you to the value of books. And you know, apparently you just brought a bunch home and piled them up, and she had the right voice and the right mindset. Where did that come from her? And do you do that with your kids as well?
It's a great point, and it also shows that you did your homework. Yeah, my mother was only 15 years old when she had me. And by the age of 17, it was me and my brother and I. And it was really just the three of us. We grew up in a very impoverished community, and it was a struggle for us to make ends meet, and we didn't always have access to television or movies, but one thing that we always had access to were books, because we can get them from the library, as she would say, for free 99. And so she would read books to us. I don't, honestly, it's a great question, because she instilled the importance of us at reading as a teenager. While she was a child herself, she did not get that from her parents. You've asked me a question that I need to find the answer to. I don't know where her love of reading became, because she was an avid reader at that stage and instilled that power of reading in me. But I don't know where she got it from. So I thank you for that question, because it is a question I'm going to relay to her, so that I in turn have an answer for myself and for future interviews.
I'm going to look forward to that Instagram reel or story, or however you choose to share
That's
it.
right.
That's going to be pretty epic. I'm a reader as well, and Robin Sharma's 8 Forms of Wealth That Money Can't Buy. Interestingly enough, one of those forms is money itself. So maybe you need to retitle that. But he got that inspiration because, he was with a ski instructor that, wasn't by any means wealthy, but he said, you know what, Robin, I'm not rich, but I have a rich life. And I think you just described the life of a teen mom and her 2 boys. You can make it rich.
Yeah.
And so now, what advice would you give to people? Let's say that you'd be in a position, your mom be in a better position. If we do have a young mom who has so much stacked up against her, what can she learn from that to build on and share with her kids?
Well, I'll use the blueprint from my mom is one, and I admire my mom in many different facets, but one of the things that even at a young age, she sacrificed her childhood for the betterment of her children. And I think when it comes to success, I think it's a powerful lesson. If you're going to be successful in any facet, you're going to sacrifice something, whether it's your time, it's your energy, it's your money, it's your resources. You don't get the opportunity to be great at something unless you're willing to sacrifice something. So for my mom at 17 years old and having 2 kids, she knew that her youth was virtually switched into that being a relevant, empowered parent. And so that was her sacrifice. And I think that we as parents need to look at that as well. Like there's something that we're going to have to sacrifice for the betterment of our children. So you may not be able to get that Prada bag, knowing that you're going to have to invest in your child's education or hang out with your friends as much as you'd like to, because your time and efforts and energy need to be spent at home. But I think one of the other things that I am grateful for is that she instilled the importance of reading and literature to me, because that was a gift that just kept on giving, that's still giving to this day. And so many of my peers, in fact, not even my peers, but just society as a whole, don't read. I think the statistic I posted recently is that 80% of all adults never read a book after college. And that's insane to me. But it's sadly the society in which we live in. Our phones and social media and things like that are part of the culprits. But I think also part of the culprit is instilling early into our children's psyche the importance and the power of reading.
Well, let's go with that for just a moment, because we can push a button, we can listen, we can watch.
Yeah.
But in your experience, what is that written word on paper in front of you? And I will say on paper, because I can read from the screen, but it doesn't share the same energy with me as when I've got a good book in my hand. So what's your take on that?
Well, I firmly believe that, when we hear a great story or see a great story, it allows us to take our imagination and put it in the back seat. But when you're reading, there's something about your imagination that's ultimately enhanced. You get to determine the vividness of the characters and the scenery and the environment. And there's no other platform that allows you to do that. And one of the great things I love about reading as well is that it allows you to have a one-on-one conversation with some of the greatest minds who have ever lived, dead or alive. And podcasts and movies and biopics, they don't do the same sort of justice of someone of great relevance, whether it's a Madame Curie or a Martin Luther King or a LeBron James or a Steve Jobs, and give us that thoroughness of their life and energy and power than a book does. And so it is a tremendous level of exercise for your imagination, for your soul. In fact, I love to call books soul food, because I think that's exactly what they are.
And what a strategy when your kids wanting to go see a movie. Great, let's get the book first.
Amen. I do it every time, especially with superhero books, because superheroes are now have saturated our culture so much, and justifiably so. That's my first love, our comic books and superheroes. So when my kids were little, like that was before the next Spider-Man movie came out, we went to the bookstore and we got a bunch of Spider-Man comic books and we read it, and we're able to compare the comic book life versus the movie life. We did the same thing for The Wizard of Oz, which is a remarkably different book than it is a movie. And so I always state one of the best ways to engage your kids in reading is to, when a new movie comes out, that there's a book for it, get the book first, read the book first, so that you're able to compare it to the movie.
Well, have you ever found the movie better than the book?
Oh, no, almost never. I think The Shawshank Redemption might be one of those books that the movie edged it out just by a little bit.
Well, then I may need to read the book because
for sure.
I saw the movie. I had not read the book. In fact, I didn't even know it was a book. So how wonderful is that? But
for sure.
There's just something about the book, like you said, your imagination fills in the details, and the Hollywood directors, in my experience, you said there's one exception. They miss it every time. Somehow it's just there. So what do you see as the future of children's literature?
I have a lot of parents say to me, my child loves to read from their phone and loves to read from their iPad or loves to read from the computer. I said the key word you use there is loves to read. And so it doesn't matter what device it is that they're on. As long as they're reading, I think the vessel in which they read matters less than the fact that they're actually reading. And so I think we're going to continue to have that. I think, maybe eventually there are some type of video books where as you turn the page, there maybe the images become illuminated. I don't know. I'm thinking very Star Trek-y. But I love the fact that so many of today's really great books are transformed into movies, and that there are so many avenues, as opposed to assuming that we're kind of similar in age, that there were only a few networks at the time, and now there's literally hundreds of networks, and the worlds of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu's are bringing these stories and characters to life, and I think that's a good thing. I am not in the camp that that technology is bad or that kids only watching TV is bad. I emphasize to parents to make sure to have an and mindset, not an or mindset. This is not reading a book or watching a movie. This is reading a book and watching a movie. Like these things need to be prominent with our culture because they're not going away. Our kids are clamoring for them. So let's meet them where they are so that they in turn do a better job of meeting us where we are.
Well, we have an interesting world where there's a lot of filters, and sometimes these filters are imposed. So as a parent, how are you going to filter what the child gets that's nourishing to body, mind, and spirit, as opposed to, unfortunately, I think the number one business ever is selling on people's addictions. It's a scary thought.
Yeah, I think this all stems from spending quality time with your child and building their self-esteem up, making them believe in themselves. I don't think the problem is, listen, I grew up watching Scarface and seeing images, like A Clockwork Orange, seeing some of the most crazy macabre images that you can imagine. But my mother instilling pride and joy and respect and honor and integrity, she built those things inside of me. So I looked at those things as entertainment, not as role models to kind of follow. So I think the better job we do as parents in instilling our confidence and self-esteem inside of them, we have a better chance of when they get out into the world and they're going to get out there and they're going to be exposed to things that are nefarious. It's going to be the character that we've built inside of them that allows them to be bulletproof from those things.
I wonder if that's a spinoff for a new book. I wonder if we need to teach the parents. That seems like that'd be a great thing. So, you say you were sales before writing. So How did that evolution happen? How did that transition happen?
So I'll tell you the quick story. I was working for Allied Waste as a sales representative, and Allied Waste at the time was the second largest trash hauler in the country, and I was a sales representative for them. So in other words, I was a glorified garbage dumpster seller. So, but it actually was a really great job. And then on a hot summer day, my son asked me a question that would change my life. He said, "Dad, can we open up a lemonade stand?" He made $50 in 3 hours selling lemonade. He said, Dad, what am I going to do with the $50? I said, I don't know. I went to my local bookstore to try to find a book to teach him. I couldn't find one, so I wrote one. And so that transition from sales to author was scary because I had always been on the other side of the book, on the reader side of the book, certainly not at the writer or publisher side of it. But once that was exposed to me and I realized that not only did I have a gift for storytelling, but I actually enjoyed it immensely, it quickly became my passion, and also to help me develop my purpose, which is to empower our young people to become the best versions of themselves and using literature as the way to do that.
Well, passion and purpose is the perfect combination for just about anybody. So what about people who are passionate about writing, but haven't found an avenue yet? What advice would you have for them?
Well, it depends on what their goals are. I mean, to be a writer, not every person who writes wants to be a best-selling novelist. Sometimes they just want to write for joy. Sometimes they want to write for therapy. So I think you have to figure out what's the avenue in which you're choosing to go to. And if it is to be a best-selling author, one of my favorite quotes from Jack Canfield, the books of the Success Principles, is that success leaves clues. And that, it's easy to see someone who's done the work that you're trying to do, see how it is that they did it, and mimic it. Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And so, and I've done my share of stealing and seeing what other great authors have done, what great people are social media content creators have done. And I kind of combine those things to find my voice, to use it as a way to spread the gospel on social media of parenting as well as authorship. And, it's not only working well for me, I really enjoy it.
What you mentioned, Jack Canfield. I'm in a mastermind where he came in as a guest speaker.
Wow.
And how fascinating that he was in a mastermind when he got the idea of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Wow.
And understand, those were all stories that he didn't write.
That's right.
They just collected them, and they
point.
created the best-selling series of all time. So, and then interestingly enough, he's taken some interesting twists. And I'll just as plug for Jack, he's a genius. But his next book, I believe, is going to be Plant Medicine for the Soul.
Huh.
So, he's, nature has so many different gifts, and used in the right environment, it can expand consciousness. Now, we want to go with prose and we want to use clean stuff and all that other stuff, but that is something that he is, interestingly enough, pursuing. So maybe we go with this. You do have an expanded consciousness, and how did you get it? Was it just the love and values that your mom gave you, or what's going on there?
I grew up as a kid in the Bronx. In 1967, I was born. I got to witness living in the projects and living in the hood and everything that stereotypically went along with that. But one of the great things that I attribute to my personal growth and success is I got to witness the conception, the birth, the growth and development of hip hop music. I literally got to witness a genre become born in front of me, and not just any genre. You could argue the greatest marketing, social media, musical genre that may have ever been created. You can make that argument. And to see young Black people gather together and create their own platform to find their voice, and to use that voice to literally showcase to the world our joys, our sorrows, our loves, our hates, and for it to be as powerful as an entity as it is today. I mean, hip hop, but breakdancing was just in the Olympics. I mean, like, breakdancing happened was conceived in front of my eyes. 40, 50 years later, it is now an Olympic event. So it tells you what happens when you believe in yourself and who you are, when you're unapologetic and what it is that you stand for, and that you're courageous enough to be able to shout it out to the world. And that's what hip hop is. And I think that was really what I like to believe I embody is a sense of courageousness, a sense of self-confidence, and coming from the Bronx, a sense of cool. That's just what the Bronx is. And so, although I live now in Central California, I will always be a kid from the Bronx, and I'm proud that I embody that and who I am and what I stand for.
I have a patient that wrote a book. His name is Ron Worley, and the book is entitled From Ditches to Riches. Okay. And he sent me a copy, and I said, Ron, how'd you get that cover? How'd you get that title? He says, that's my story. Well, one of the wisdom, there's a lot of wisdom in it, but he said, there's two types of smarts. There's street smarts, we're going to call that SS, and there's book smarts, we're going to call that BS. And he said, book smarts without street smarts is just BS.
Wow.
And so
Love
now
it.
I'm all for book smarts. I've spent plenty of time with that, but the street smarts that you have, you can't get that. I don't believe you can in an environment unless you're in there like you've been through. What about people like me that hadn't had that challenging road to learn those tough lessons and give you those street smarts? What advice do you have for me? Do I have to go and spend time in neighborhoods that I'm going to be very challenged to be in, or how does that go?
No, not at all. I think what makes me is my authenticity. And like being a kid from the Bronx is who I am and what it is that I stand for. And if I don't know where you're from, but if I try to go there and be that I'm not being true to who I am. I'm as you would say in the Bronx, perpetrating the fraud. And like I think it's so essential that you don't have to be in that space. You should respect that space. You can appreciate that space, but you don't have to be in that space. If you choose to, then that's one thing. Then you befriend people, you learn the history, you respect the culture and the knowledge, you learn as much as you can, but also be proud of who you are and what you stand for. And I'm a kid from the hood. I will always be a kid from the hood. I don't think that's a title that you're going to embody. That doesn't seem who you are. And you know what? That's great. I'm sure there are attributes to where you are from and what it is that you stand for that I don't have, and I probably will never absorb. And that's okay too. Like that's the beauty of being one of 6 billion people on this planet, is that we are our own person, and there's no one like us. There's no one that will ever be like us. There's no one that has ever been like us. And that is our power, and that is our joy. So stand strong in who you are and what it is that you stand for, because no one else has ever done it quite like you.
Well, one of my great mentors said that, life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And it's
Amen.
not in the way, it's on the way.
Love it.
And so what an interesting rise to where you've gotten. So I might just ask you, what's your top street lesson then?
It's so simple. When people tell me that they're going to New York and they're scared or whatever, I said, first of all, the perception of what you think New York is completely wrong. It is as wonderful and welcoming a place as you can go and visit. But it is fast paced. People are very myopic in what it is. People aren't anti you; they're just pro them. So don't think that people are after you. They're just taking care of themselves, because in a New York fast-paced environment, that's what you kind of have to do. But the piece of advice I give them is a piece of advice I'd give them for any place else, but particularly for New York, is just use your common sense. Don't eat bubble gum from off the floor. Don't just be a heightened level, have a heightened sense of awareness as you usually would in any other place, and just use your common sense. New York City is such a beautiful, amazing, eclectic place, full of wonder and joy, as well as sorrows and despair, like any other place in the world. So as you navigate it and life, just use your common sense, and chances are you'll be okay.
Yeah, I've been to New York many times. I love it. I've actually been to the Bronx. I've been on the subway. I was at Yankee Stadium before Yankee Stadium went away.
Yep.
And so many things. But you're right. That fast pace seems almost unmatched. So if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And so how did you choose where you are now?
So that's a great story. I was living in Western Massachusetts 2.5 years ago when I was on TikTok, and this beautiful woman simply liked one of my photos, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who is that? I went on her page, and I was just captivated by her beauty, by her amazing sense of humor, and her joy. And I literally said out loud, "That's my person." And despite her living in Fresno, California, and I lived in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, I reached out to her. We started voice talking, then we started video chatting. A month later, I flew down to meet her for the first time, and it took one day to realize that this was my person. And 9 months later, I packed up everything I owned. I moved to Central California. We live together now blissfully, and she's my best friend. She's my biggest cheerleader and the greatest love I've ever known.
Well, how beautiful, and by the way, a different kind of love, right? I remember you said you announced that you were a mama's boy. And you always want to give your mom a shout out. Every Mother's Day, and I should tell my mother more often, I quote Abe Lincoln: "All that I am, all that I will ever be, I owe to my mother."
Wow.
Is your mother still with us? I'm assuming she is.
Oh, for sure. Not only is she still with us, she's a rock star. She's She's flamboyant and joyful and so beautifully spirited. She's kind of a mother to everyone she meets. So if you were to meet her, you would just adopt a new mom, or she would adopt a new son. I'm going to see her in a couple of weeks when I go to New York. She's my best friend. I all that I am and all that I ever will be, I attribute to my mom. She's my hero, and and the world is just so much a better place because of her.
Well, that's so clear and so powerful in your story. And I want to encourage all of us. We can all say that. Now, sometimes our moms, they just gave us life, and sometimes they gave us a whole lot more than that. But without them, we're not here. So,
that is right.
and by the way, if there's a bridge to build with a mom, build it. And I know you or I don't have that challenge, but maybe someone listening to this, maybe they'll be inspired to reach out to mom. So we know where you came from. We know where you are. Where are you going?
That's a great question. Physically, I don't think I'm leaving California anytime soon. I've always had an infatuation with it, and justifiably so. I really enjoy it here. As far as business-wise, I am cashing in all my chips on this Danny Dollar Entrepreneur Fair. To scale from 50 to 3,000 students in 6 different states in only 3 years is a testament that this is a powerful journey and project. And I believe that I can make it a household name within the next 5 years, and I'm going to make that happen. It's an important program because it teaches kids to believe in themselves and that it's never too early to start working towards their future. And I'm really sold on it. So my business future is going to be down the path of this entrepreneur fair. And other than that, every other day moving forward is just trying to be the best versions of myself, learning how I can best serve others, and just love and engage with every person I engage with.
So how can we help? How can we help with this Danny Dollar Entrepreneur Fair?
Well, you can visit my website, which the link is in my bio. If anyone who's on Instagram or other social media platform, you can either just go to my website, which is tyallanjackson.com, or visit me on Instagram, which is how we connected, and which is also my primary platform for social engagement, and support my work. I mean, obviously, but selfishly, I'm as an indie author, every book sale helps me and personally and professionally. But because these books are just fun and joyful, informative and entertaining, and empowering, I think they'll be of great service to you and your family. And so, that's it.
All right. The nice thing is we don't ever know where this is going, right? One of my mentors that I never met in person, right? Met through his writing. You never know what you may think, say, or do, and how it may impact millions tomorrow. And it might even be billions. Someone's going to watch this that's going to have an avenue to fast track that if you want to fast track it. Sometimes growth can be a little scary when it happens that fast, but I see that as being a valuable mission for our entire world. We're about at that sweet spot wrap up point for podcast time. So what message do you want to finish on?
The one thing that I've learned in my 15 years of authorship and literally engaging with hundreds of thousands of children in person across the country is that us as parents, guardians, educators, we have to do a better job of speaking up to our children. I know we are accustomed to talking down on their level so that they understand, so that we understand them. I think it's our job to speak up and let them understand us. They are clean slates. It is way easier to teach a 5-year-old how to play piano than a 25-year-old how to play piano. So honor and respect our young people. Lift them up and speak up to them, and I guarantee you will be a part of building a better world through our amazing and beautiful children. Wow,
that's a message that I certainly hope all of us can resonate with. I certainly do. And I'm going to wrap up with the words I usually wrap up with. I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So enjoy this, pay it forward, and God bless all, always.